Please welcome Adrian Gonzalez, President of Adelante SEM.
I got this feeling inside my bones.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, great. It's always tough being, the first speaker after lunch. You got to make sure that everyone's awake. Love that song. I've been waiting all day to see what song was going to be played when they introduced me. So kudos to whoever picked that song. Great song, and kudos to this kid for holding this pose for all these hours. Was it just me? Doesn't it look real, like from the back of the room? When I first came in, I thought that was like a real kid that was being paid to stand like that. Anyway, all joking aside, it's great to be here at the Command Alkon ELEVATE 2017 conference. This is my first time at this conference. I've been doing supply chain and logistics research now for over 18 years, working with a variety of different industries. I'm relatively new to the heavy building materials industry. I did have the opportunity yesterday to facilitate the leadership roundtable discussions, and it was a great morning of learning, a great morning of sharing ideas in terms of how to elevate the innovation in this industry, in terms of how to foster greater collaboration and communication with everyone in the industry. So I learned a lot. I know it was a great, productive session yesterday. I learned a lot of new terms that I really didn't know before. Tickets, slumping. I always thought slumping was when you sat down and you kind of, down in your chair and kind of slouched down a little bit. I also learned that there's a difference between concrete and cement. So I'm guilty as charged. But I'm excited to get home now, and I'm going to bring my kids out to the sidewalk, and I'm going to ask them, what's this beneath our feet? And if they say cement, I'm going to say, wrong, it's concrete. Now go tell your friends, right? So hopefully I'll be part of teaching the next generation of folks that there is a difference between cement and concrete. Anyway, I've got a brief time here today, and so what am I going to talk to you about? I'm going to talk to you about why fleet and freight visibility matters. If I go back 18 years, and I actually did this back 18 years ago, and I would survey supply chain logistics executives, and it didn't matter what industry they were from, and I asked them, what's your top 1, 2, or 3 priorities, the things that you're looking to improve? Without fail, almost every time, greater supply chain visibility came in the top 1 or 2. More timely, more accurate, more complete visibility, end to end. From all the way from origin all the way to final destination. You fast forward to today, and you ask supply chain logistics professionals, again, regardless of industry, what's your top priorities? And supply chain visibility, again, comes up in the top 3, and usually number 1. Now, I can spend a whole afternoon talking about why, over the span of 18 years, supply chain visibility continues to be, number 1, or continues to be a challenge. Part of the reason, not surprising, is that supply chains continue to evolve and continue to change. They're very dynamic. But if you look at even just more recently, and you look at kind of a step down, one of the areas that's getting a lot more interest and more demand right now is for increased fleet and freight visibility. Just in the past 6 months alone, I cover a lot of, I keep track of a lot of what's happening in the software industry. Just in the past 6 months alone, there have been 2 major acquisitions related to fleet and freight visibility, over $100 million in investment. I talked to a lot of venture capitalists and private equity folks. There's a lot of interest in investing in this type of technology. I go to many conferences, as you can imagine, and when I talk to supply chain logistics professionals, a lot of interest in this topic. In fact, earlier today, I attended the 5 qubits session. It was a relatively large room, and it was pretty well packed. So that tells me that many of you in the audience are either using that solution right now or interested in using that solution. So the question is why? Why is that becoming, a higher demand? Why is that becoming, more important? Well, at the most basic level is that, nothing ever goes according to plan, right? We all know that supply chain at its core, it's all about exception management. It doesn't matter how good your plan is. Yesterday, this morning, things are going to change in the course of time. And whether it's delays due to traffic or due to weather or mechanical breakdown, whether it's a new order that's added or an order that the customer wanted delivered at 1 o'clock and it's now being pushed to 4 o'clock, all these things happen day in and day out that create exceptions, right? And if you don't have visibility to where your trucks are, where the fleet is, to what the status of an order is, it's very difficult to respond quickly and intelligently, to those exceptions, right? And if you look at today, the margin for error is much tighter than it ever was before. Customers across all industries are becoming much more demanding, looking for more reliability and consistency in terms of the delivery operations, whether it's on the pickup side or on the delivery side itself. So that's part of why there's increased demand and interest in this whole area. The other thing is, and kind of Phil and the Command Alkon team kind of touched upon this in their talk this morning around the whole Domino's pizza piece, is that delivery for many industries, and I would argue ultimately for every industry, is becoming a competitive weapon. For many, many years, delivery, transportation has historically been viewed as a cost center, right? Very tactical. The goal was always to minimize delivery costs and transportation costs as much as possible. Now, that's still important today, and I think unfortunately many companies still view transportation and logistics as a cost center. But if you look at the more innovative companies, those that are looking to create a competitive advantage, they're beginning to look at delivery as a competitive weapon. They're looking at delivery beyond just a cost perspective. Managing costs is still going to be important, but looking beyond that, right? How can we leverage delivery and logistics to increase sales, right? Top line growth, to grow market share, right? Take business away from our competition, and to increase customer loyalty, right? To maintain, once you win that customer, how do you maintain that customer? Now, the prime example here is actually, Amazon, right? Which I think, how many of you are Amazon Prime members, right? A good number of you, right? And that to them, when you look at Amazon's success, that's been their killer weapon, right? When it started out, you paid, now it's $99 a year, but part of that you get, free 2-day delivery on everything you order, along with other benefits. But they use that delivery benefit, that free delivery benefit, to increase their market share and to drive sales. So there's been a research that's been done, and it's been done annually, that shows that Prime members spend up to $800 more on Amazon than non-Prime members, right? So there it is, using delivery as a way to increase sales and increase market share. Now, I always hesitate using Amazon as an example because obviously, as you probably all know, Amazon loses a ton of money on delivery and logistics, right? So they're not, but they kind of offset that with their, cloud business and other aspects of it. But nonetheless, I think, so I don't suggest that all companies should copy Amazon in what they do, but I think they're just a data point, they're an example. Another example, and I can't name the company, but this is from a couple of years ago, is from a food and beverage company. And what they were doing was their VP of supply chain logistics was driving better collaboration with their sales organization. And this VP went to their sales leader and said, look, we've got great capabilities from our logistics and transportation operations here. We're able to, if our customers need, if they're ordering in smaller quantities, they want more frequent deliveries, and if they want that delivery to be, more consistent and reliable, if they want to be able to change order quantities, more frequently, we're able to do that because of the investments we've made in technology, because of the investments we've made in our facilities, because of the training that we've provided our employees. So not only technology, process changes, organizational changes, the training that they've done. We're confident that we can outbeat our competition in terms of meeting our customers' requirements from a transportation and logistics standpoint, right? And their customers being mainly the grocery stores. So why don't we go in together, right, and leverage this capability that we have, differentiated capability that we have in transportation and logistics to actually take market share from our competition, because I'm confident that our competition is not going to be able to be as flexible and as agile as we can. And they've been able to do that, successfully. So there's we talk a lot about collaboration in this industry. There's an example of sales and logistics working together to actually, position logistics and transportation as a value-added differentiator, as a way to, again, increase market share and sales. So here in the heavy building materials ecosystem, delivery is what connects, is one aspect of what connects all of the different stakeholders and participants in this ecosystem, right? This physical flow of goods, right, raw materials that are moving between the different parties here. Obviously technology and information is another aspect of what connects the ecosystem here. But obviously delivery has a ripple effect on many of the metrics that impact profitability, that impact productivity across the industry. So here, I listed some of the obvious ones, right? If a delivery is late, right, that impacts asset utilization, whether it's the hauler and the utilization of their vehicles, their trucks, or whether it's at the plant in terms of the utilization of their production equipment. Production schedules get impacted, and that also then has a ripple effect on impacting the productivity of your labor. Inventory levels, that's a universal consequence of having poor predictability and poor reliability of delivery. What you end up doing is carrying more inventory, so it increases your inventory costs. Safety is very important for many industries. It's very important in this industry as well, right? So that's another dimension of another metric that gets impacted, by delivery. And then obviously, what we've been talking about so far, customer satisfaction, which for many industries now, they're placing that customer at the center of their supply chain universe and designing their supply chains around what do we need to do to make sure that we satisfy our customer as a way to drive sales and enhance customer loyalty. So how do we get from being in the dark to being in the know? I mean, that's really what, at the end of the day, supply chain logistics professionals, transportation professionals, fleet operators are looking to achieve. Now, I think we all experience what happens when you're in the dark, right? When it comes to a delivery or a service call. Just to give you a quick anecdote, my oldest daughter, she's 17, she got her driver's license, almost a year ago. And I won't bore you with all the details, but literally a week before she took a driver's test, we had the car parked in the driveway. The garage door was already closed, and somehow car went forward and she crunched our garage door. Okay, perfect convex, smashing of the garage door. So I had to call the garage door repair company, right? And they said, okay, we can be there on Thursday. Okay, so Wednesday afternoon they called me and they said the repair person is going to be there between 7 a.m. and 12 noon. Okay, a 5-hour time window. Okay, which in and of itself is pretty large these days, right? Which means I have to be at home now for 5 hours waiting to see when this this repair person is going to show up. So 7 o'clock comes, 8 o'clock comes, 9 o'clock comes, 10 o'clock comes, haven't heard anything. 11 o'clock comes, noon, still haven't heard anything. At 12:45, okay, I finally call and said, what's going on? They said, oh, he got delayed at a previous stop, and then we had an emergency call come in, so he had to go address that first. So he's probably going to be there now around 2 o'clock. Now, it's bad enough to be late, right? But if I would have gotten a call or a text or some kind of notification, let's say at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., right? to say, you know what, your ETA has changed, it's now going to be 2 p.m., I would have been able to be much more productive, right? I could have gone to the gym and done a quick workout. I could have gone to the grocery store. I could have called some clients and not have been afraid that I was going to be interrupted by the service call. But that's the kind of and I think all of us historically that have had to wait for a repair person or something like that kind of can feel that impact on productivity. And that's the same thing that happens when you're kind of driving blind and don't have that kind of predictability and reliability on the delivery front. And what I hear from a lot of supply chain logistics professionals is, and this was brought up this morning in this morning's talk, is why can't we have in the business world what we have in our personal lives with like Uber, right? Where we can see in real time, where that, in this case, in this scenario, where I could have seen in real time where that repair person was, where I can see ETAs being updated on time, where I can see other value-added information. Well, then I can then adjust my schedules, my labor, my activities accordingly. So that's really where technology is coming to play. But obviously, it has a ripple effect where we really have to change the way we've always done things, right? And that impacts processes as well, and really thinking at it more from a ecosystem standpoint and a collaboration standpoint. So what is your estimated time of arrival, right? So this is really moving away from time windows, right? So this 5-hour time window to really being able to provide estimated times of arrival, and more importantly, be able to adjust those in real time, right? Because we all know that time is money, right? Because poor visibility and uncertainty results in decreased utilization of assets, lower labor productivity, higher inventory levels, diminished customer service and satisfaction. I think we all of you in the audience probably all feel that impact, right? When you don't have that visibility and that understanding of how what you were promised is, when that's no longer going to be fulfilled, what the new time is. Visibility is particularly important in order to enable proactive action, right? And this is one of the key trends that's happening across supply chain logistics today, right? It's moving away from being reactive, right? So looking back at what happened earlier today, at what happened yesterday, at what happened last week, and actually being able to, in real time, be able to see what's transpiring and be able to take proactive action to either prevent the problem from occurring or minimize its impact, right? So in my case, like I said before, the ability to, if I knew that ETA was going to change, the ability to then adjust my schedule, my plans, for that day, for the next few hours until that service person arrived. In the case of some of your operations, is the ability perhaps to resequence pickups or resequence some of the production schedules. And then even more importantly, be able to proactively notify your customers or those that are waiting on you that a delay is going to happen, right? And give them an updated time schedule to give them the opportunity to adjust plans and reallocate resources. So this is where a lot of the focus is today around business intelligence and analytics, and the importance of real-time information. It's to be able to be more proactive. Now, of course, one of the things that you hear a lot of folks talking about today, and I think it was mentioned earlier this morning, the next step is really to be predictive and prescriptive, right? It's to be able to see what's happening across your network and be able to predict that if these trends continue, X will happen, right? If this continues to happen, this delivery is going to be late, and then it's going to have this ripple effect, and then be able to automatically readjust plans, readjust schedules, and then send out these proactive notifications. So right now, the key takeaway here is real-time visibility to your fleet, real-time visibility to what's happening in your operations allows you to move from being reactive to being proactive, and then ultimately, where we're moving, the next frontier is to be predictive. And the technology is already part of the way there. The question now is how do you leverage that more effectively? Visibility also enables you to manage by exception. And this is something that Ken talked about this morning when he talked about the 4 key attributes or key things. And one of the things he said was be able to focus on what's important, right? And the bigger your operations get, you can easily drown in data, and you could easily be spending time and resources in areas that we really don't need to be spending time and resources on. But really the key thing right now is to maximize the productivity of your labor, to maximize the effectiveness of your operations, really to focus your time and energy on the exceptions, right? On what's not going according to plan. And that's what really is going to enable companies to scale more effectively ultimately without having to add more labor, more resources as you scale your operations, add more trucks, add more deliveries, add more, try to manage more customer orders. It's really focusing in on where those problem areas are and address those rather than try to keep track of everything that's happening. Because in many cases, kind of the classic 80-20 rule, like 80% of the stuff is probably going all right. You really don't even need to look at it, but you want to be able to focus in on those 20% of the things that are trending in the wrong direction and then be able to take proactive action, again, to avoid a problem or minimize its impact. Visibility enables faster order to cash. This is an area where when you're talking about a return on investment, when you're trying to put some dollar signs behind enhanced fleet visibility, this is an area that I think it's critically important. And yesterday in the leadership roundtable, a lot of the discussion focused on what if, right? And where does the industry want to move to? And a lot of it is really, if you look at things like electronic proof of delivery, the ability to use geofences to be able to track when a product leaves a production facility, for example, when it crosses and breaks the geofence at the delivery site, and be able to then automatically, once that truck then leaves that delivery facility, be able to then issue the invoice, issue the proof of delivery, right? So minimize the number of touches that's involved in the whole order to cash process, and really expedite the whole financial side of things. It is one of the key areas where a lot of companies are where the opportunity really exists to have a financial impact in this whole area. So again, when having real-time visibility and leveraging that breadcrumb trail, understanding when the truck has left, when it has arrived, and really trying to do that with minimal or no touches whatsoever, right? Really triggered by the data coming in from the GPS, the data coming in from the trucks themselves to initiate these processes. That's where a lot of companies are moving in that direction and looking to move in that direction. So this was a survey that we did from some of the attendees that participated in yesterday's leadership roundtable discussion. And so the sample size is relatively small. There was 15 people that had answered at the time that we gathered this data. And the question we asked was, making smarter and faster decisions will have the greatest impact on achieving, and the number one answer was service improvements. And I think this underscores the point I made earlier, that today one of the key areas where a lot of companies are focused on, and obviously companies in your industry are focused on, cost is important, but really it's that service component where a lot of the focus is on in terms of how do we drive improvement in that area. Because again, if you drive improvement in that area, that will have significant benefits on productivity, significant benefits ultimately on cost, as well, and on retaining and winning, new business if you're able to meet the more demanding service requirements that your customers have. So what's the path to making smarter decisions faster, right? So there's a lot of data that's collected in the industry today. And in fact, you could argue that sometimes we're kind of drowning in data. The key thing is, number one, is ensuring that the data you're collecting is aligned with the key performance indicators and your strategic and objectives that you're trying to achieve, right? Because if you don't have, if you're collecting data for the sake of data, just to collect data points, and it's not really linked to a key performance indicator or some strategic objectives, then you're really wasting your time and energy, right? And maybe you're not measuring things that you ought to be measuring, right, that are better aligned with what you're trying to achieve. So number one, it's really trying to link the data that you're capturing with these key performance indicators. Then secondly is ensuring that it's timely and it's accurate and complete, right? That the data quality is where you need it to be. Otherwise, you end up with the classic, garbage in, garbage out. But data alone without context is relatively meaningless, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to convert that data into knowledge, right? Into actionable, insights. And this is where, software comes in and technology comes in. Things like optimization. Earlier today, I attended the optimization, session. And a lot of what the presenter talked about was the ability to leverage what was happening in real time to be able to optimize or re-optimize in real time, the operations, right, in terms of servicing the different plants and servicing the different customers that you have based on what was happening, in real time, right? So feeding that information into an optimization engine, critically important. Simulation and business intelligence and analytics. Again, these are all, some of the tools that are available today that certainly a lot has been written about and talked about and the companies are investing in, again, to really translate that data into knowledge and insights that ultimately translate into action, right? Because at the end of the day, what every company is trying to do is make smarter decisions faster that are going to result in the expected benefits, right? So it's faster, smarter, and more importantly, or just as important, it's also synchronized. It's also synchronized, and this is part of what we talked a little bit about yesterday as part of that leadership roundtable, is the fact that everyone in this room, whether you're a supplier, you're a hauler, you're a producer, whatever part of the ecosystem you're in, you all impact one another, and you're all impacted, by each other, right? So having that flow of information and then being able to translate it into action, but synchronize action, is critically important. So what's next? So this was another one of the things that Ken talked about in terms of thinking a few years down the road. And certainly I could have talked about many things here, but I focused on two things that I think are relevant and I think are important. The first is machine learning. There's a lot of discussion today around machine learning, and I don't go down into the weeds in terms of, from a technical standpoint, what makes machine learning tick, but at a high level, it truly is a fundamentally different form of computing, right? It's a fundamentally different form of computing. So if you look at just like let's say optimization, traditional optimization, what you try to do is you try to create a mathematical model or algorithm to represent what your operations look like. But it's relatively static, right? You develop the model, this is what, and this is what my operations are, and it's got math behind it, right? What machine learning is completely different. What it does is it takes huge amounts of data, right? And it then represents, it almost comes up automatically with what that model ought to look like. And then the learning aspect is that your operations and your network is continuously changing. So as new data is coming in, and it spots trends, and it spots relationships between different aspects of your operations and the data that's coming in, that the best data scientists and the best humans are just not able to do, right? And really at the foundation of it is having big data, having large amounts of data, but it's really now looking, rather than having a fixed model, it's really looking at that data and identifying relationships and seeing what's happening. And really where the insight comes is, really identifying correlations that may not be intuitive, right? So if an order comes in on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. and it's from this customer, and we're thinking we're going to source it from this location, and 3 or 4 other factors, what typically happens in that scenario? And how is that different than if the order came at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, right? And if it's raining or not raining. I mean, you can think of all the different types of data that can go into this, that the machine learns, and it can kind of see what happened the last time, and then can predict what may happen in the future, and then ultimately even prescribe what corrective actions to take. I mean, the best example I've come up with machine learning, and this was actually from many years ago, and it wasn't even called machine learning then, in terms of those non-intuitive correlations, was from 7-Eleven in Japan. And what 7-Eleven discovered was that there was a correlation between diaper sales and beer. Okay? Diaper sales and beer. Now, you wouldn't think that those two things would be, correlated. But when they started analyzing what was going on, what they realized was, this is particularly in Japan, a lot of folks in Japan use the metro, the trains, to commute to work back and forth. And a lot of times, it's the husbands that were working. And a lot of times, the wives would call the husbands and would say, hey, on your way home, we need more diapers, okay? And there were 7-Elevens that were a lot of these, near these metro stations, so when the husbands would come home and they would pick up that package of diapers, they would also pick up a 6-pack of beer and bring home, right? So again, that's just that's a real-life example of two products where their demand profiles are correlated that you wouldn't intuitively think that they would be, right? Now imagine that in your business where you're dealing with many other factors, right? Whether it's weather, whether it's traffic, time of day, the type of material that you're dealing with, so on and so forth, right? And I think that's the power of machine learning. The other key trend is self-driving vehicles. And there's a lot of discussions, obviously right now, a lot of the automotive makers are focused on self-driving cars. But you already see automated vehicles in mines. So here's an example of one from Komatsu, self-driving dump truck. I believe it's Caterpillar, and there are mines in Australia that are currently using automated vehicles, as part of their operations. Now, how applicable will self-driving trucks be in your particular industry? Right? Will there ever come a day where there won't be a driver or a human behind the wheel? Probably not. I think some industries, particularly if safety is an issue, right? Particularly if the driver does more than just drive, right? You will always have a human in that arena. But one of the aspects of self-driving cars is that there's really different levels of autonomy, right? So you may not get to full autonomous, vehicles. But from a standpoint of being able to better route the vehicles, better space the vehicles, be able to free up the driver of those vehicles to do some other value-added activity while they're going from point A to point B, those are all things that are possible. So I think it's something to keep on the radar. It's something to think about. What if, right? What if these vehicles start getting deployed in our operations, or what would it make it? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities if they are? So finally, just some assessment questions here, right? So I mean, how quickly and accurately can you answer where's my truck and where's my order, right? I think in today's environment, and kind of the expectation is right now is that when someone asks you those two questions, that you're able to answer it in a matter of seconds, right? In a matter of seconds, versus having to pick up the phone, right? Having to call the driver or dispatch, right? Where are you? What's going on, right? It's being able to have that visibility, that knowledge, that insight at your fingertips, right? That's the expectation that's being set right now. It's being set by all of us because that's the expectation we have right now in our own personal lives with things like Uber, and that's being translated now into the business world. More importantly is, are you leveraging visibility data and insights to drive continuous improvement in your planning and execution processes? So again, it's kind of nice to see, have up on the screen, a lot of little kind of trucks moving around and seeing breadcrumb trails and see where it is, right? So from that's one aspect of it that gives you, that's a step improvement from where you might have been in the past. But at the end of the day, what are you going to do with that information, right? What are you going to do? How are you going to drive continuous improvement in your operations? And I think this is where, again, linking that with optimization, technology to re-optimize is one example. Talked about the order-to-cash process and being able to, compress that cycle by leveraging, geofences, right? And that information to automatically do self-invoicing or automated invoicing. Right? So those are the opportunities, right? Some of the opportunities to actually leverage that real-time data to drive, business value. And then, are you spending your time and resources managing everything or just the exceptions, right? So that's the other key, element of here, right? It's the ability to work smarter, not harder. Really focusing your time and energy on that, let's say 20% of things that are trending in the wrong direction, where a delivery is going late, and then being able to have the processes and the capabilities to proactively respond to those exceptions, and again, minimize the impact or even resolve the problem before it even turns into reality. So again, those were kind of some of the things I wanted to share kind of at a high level in terms of why fleet and freight visibility matters, and kind of some of the things that I'm seeing out in the industry, not only your industry, but other industries as well, and hopefully provide you with some food for thought or ideas in terms of why this is becoming more important. And if you're not ready, investing in these areas or looking in these areas, why perhaps you should be. So with that, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.